"Miss, you need to step down now." The driver's voice was sharp enough to cut through the heat. The stagecoach had already stopped, the horses stamping and snorting, leather creaking, flies buzzing thick in the air. People were staring. Clara Whitmore stayed where she was, one boot on the iron step, hands locked around the strap of her carpetbag like it might be pulled away. "Miss," the driver said again, louder this time, "I can't sit here all day." Dust hung in a brown veil across the street. Drifting through the open space between false, front buildings, a man coughed somewhere behind her. Someone laughed. Clara felt it then, the pressure. Not fear exactly, more like the sense that if she didn't move right now, something would be decided for her. She stepped down. The ground felt wrong under her boots, too hard, too hot. The coach rolled away almost immediately, wheels clattering, leaving her standing there with her trunk still lashed on top, and her bag in her hand. For a moment, she wondered if they'd forgotten her entirely. Clara Whitmore. She turned. The man who spoke stood a few paces back, tall, narrow, coat unbuttoned despite the heat. A badge caught the sun on his chest, Marshall Crane. His hat was pushed low, shadowing his eyes. But his attention was fixed on her like she was already part of his business. "Yes," she said. Her throat felt dry. "That's me." He nodded once, as if confirming something already written down. "I'm to take you out to Fremont Ranch." She looked past him, down the street. Silver Flat was smaller than she'd imagined. A saloon with its doors open wide, a general store, a boarding house with lace curtains yellowed by dust, no trees, no church bell, no shade worth speaking of. "I was told Mr. Fremont would meet me," she said. "He was called south." The marshal replied, "Business." That word again, it had followed her all the way from Missouri. Tucked neatly into letters written in a careful, slanted hand, always business, always something that couldn't wait. "When will he be back?" she asked. Marshall Crane hesitated, just a fraction, but she saw it. "Soon enough," he said. "Let's get your things." Two men untied her trunk and dropped it into the bed of a wagon. The sound it made when it landed was dull and final. Everything she owned was in there, everything that mattered, anyway. Clara climbed up beside the marshal, smoothing her skirt, aware of eyes on her back. As the wagon rolled out of town, the buildings thinned, replaced by scrub and rock and a sky that felt too big. The road cut through dry ground marked with wagon ruts and hoof prints. Somewhere to the west, dark shapes rose against the pale blue horizon. "Silver Flat's quieter than I expected," Clara said, more to fill the space than anything else. Marshall Crane gave a short sound that might have been a laugh. "Depends on the week." They rode in silence after that. The heat pressed down, relentless. Sweat traced a line between her shoulder blades. The wagon jolted over a rut, and her trunk shifted behind them with a low scrape. "How far is the ranch?" she asked. "Not far," he said. "Far enough." The land opened up as they went, rolling and bare, dotted with mesquite and low brush. Then, just as her legs started to ache from sitting stiffly, she saw it. A cluster of buildings ahead, corrals, fences stretching out into the distance. A main house set back from the road, wide porch facing the sun, like it had nothing to fear from it. Fremont Ranch. Her stomach tightened. The wagon slowed as they approached. Horses moved in the corral, tails flicking. A few men looked up from their work, hands shading their eyes. Clara sat straighter, suddenly aware of the dust on her hem, the crease in her bonnet. Marshall Crane pulled the wagon to a stop. "We're here." No one came out to greet them. "That's all right," Clara said, forcing the words out. "I can wait." She climbed down before the marshal could offer his hand. Her boots hit the ground hard. One of the ranch hands approached, young, freckled, hat too big for his head. He glanced at the marshal, then at Clara, then back again. "Where do you want the trunk?" he asked. Marshall Crane looked toward the house, main house. The young man nodded, but didn't move right away. His gaze lingered on Clara's face, curious, uneasy. "You're Mr. Fremont's bride?" he asked. The word landed heavy. "Bride." "Yes," she said. "I am." He flushed and tipped his hat. "Yes, ma'am." They carried the trunk toward the house. Clara followed, the boards of the porch creaking under her weight. The front door stood open, but the inside was dim after the glare outside. A woman stepped into view, wiping her hands on her apron. She was older than Clara had expected, dark hair streaked with gray, eyes sharp and assessing. "You must be Miss Whitmore," the woman said. "I'm Marta." Relief loosened something in Clara's chest. "Thank you for receiving me. I wasn't sure. You're early." Marta cut in. "Not unkindly, Mr. Fremont said next week." Clara blinked. "He wrote that I was to arrive today." Marta frowned. "Just a little, did he?" Before Clara could answer, Marshall Crane cleared his throat. "Plans change," he said. "Miss Whitmore's here now." Marta studied him for a moment, then stepped aside. "You can come in. It's cooler." Inside, the house smelled of soap and cooked beans. The floorboards were clean, well kept, too well kept, almost like a place meant to be looked at more than lived in. "Mr. Fremont will want you comfortable," Marta said, leading her down a short hall. "You'll have the guest room." Clara paused. "The guest room?" Marta glanced back. "Until the wedding." That word again. They reached a door at the end of the hall. Marta opened it. The room was neat, simple, a bed, a washstand, a window looking out over the back of the property. Beyond the glass, Clara could see the fence line stretching out, disappearing into the heat shimmer. The trunk was set down at the foot of the bed. The sound echoed. "I'll bring water," Marta said. "You look done in." She left before Clara could thank her. Clara stood alone, hands at her sides, listening to the sounds of the ranch filtering through the walls. Hooves, voices, metal striking metal, life continuing, indifferent to her arrival. She crossed to the window. Outside, a man was crossing the yard toward the stable. He walked with easy confidence, hat low, sleeves rolled, a length of rope slung over one shoulder. As he passed beneath the window, she caught a glimpse of his face. He had a bruise along his jaw, yellowing at the edges, old, but not too old. It didn't match the rest of him. No other marks, no explanation offered. He disappeared into the stable. A strange unease settled over her. She pressed her fingers to the glass, then pulled them back when the heat burned her skin. A knock sounded at the door. "Yes," she said. Marta came back in with a basin of water. "You should wash. Supper's in an hour." "Thank you," Clara said. As Marta set the basin down, she leaned in slightly. "Mr. Fremont isn't fond of surprises," she said quietly. "Best to remember that." Clara met her gaze. "I didn't mean to surprise anyone." Marta straightened. "I know." She left again. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her trunk. She could still leave. The thought came unbidden. The road back to town wasn't far. The boarding house with its lace curtains, Eloise Taggart, the widow who'd written her a polite note months ago, offering a room if she needed one. There were options, few, but not none. But the wagon was gone. The marshal had left. Her name was already spoken here, tied to a man she hadn't met. She stood, crossed the room, and lifted the lid of her trunk. Below, in the yard, the stable door opened. Then Levi Hart stepped out of the stable, and everything changed. Levi Hart didn't notice her at first. Clara watched from the second-floor window as he stepped into the sun, one hand dragging a bridle, the other adjusting his hat. His shirt was damp down the back, and there was dirt on his forearms, as if he'd been in the stalls since dawn. When he turned slightly toward the corral, she saw the bruise more clearly, still faintly green along the jawline, not fresh, not new, not explained. He moved like someone used to being watched but uninterested in it. Downstairs, Marta called up the stairwell. "Supper's on." Clara hesitated, then tied back her hair and made her way down, skirt brushing the steps. The house smelled of beans and roasted peppers, something Clara had never tasted before arriving in Arizona. A single oil lamp glowed over the table, casting shadows across the walls. Livy was already there, standing near the front door with his back to her. He turned when she stepped into the room. "Miss Whitmore," he said. His voice was lower than she expected, dry, like the land outside. "Mr. Hart." She replied. She didn't offer her hand. He didn't move toward her. Marta swept into the room carrying a cast-iron pot, set it down on the table. "You two eat. I've got bread cooling in back." She left before either of them could object. The silence stretched. Levi gestured stiffly toward one of the chairs. "Please," he said. Clara sat. He did too, carefully, as if unsure how far civility extended between them. They passed the meal mostly in silence. The food was good, simple, heavy with spice, Levy ate like a man used to long hours between meals. She tried not to watch him. But it was hard not to. There was something precise in the way he moved, even in the way he chewed. Like he only used what was necessary, and left the rest. Halfway through, she asked, "How long have you worked here?" He looked up from his plate. 5 years. You must know Mr. Fremont well? Levy nodded once. I know the ranch. That wasn't what she'd asked. Clara set down her fork. He wrote to me often. Long letters. Mostly about cattle, rainfall, acreage. He didn't mention you. That pulled something tight in Levy's face, but only for a moment. I imagine not, he said. I'm the man who keeps things running when he's gone. And is he gone often? Levy didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached for his water, drank, then said, Depends who you ask. She frowned. I'm asking you. He studied her for a beat longer than was polite. Then yes, he said, more than he's here. Marta returned then, setting down a dish of sliced tomatoes and flatbread. She didn't look at either of them. Clara took the opportunity to shift the subject. Has it rained recently? She asked. Levi blinked, then shook his head. Why? Just wondering if that's why the air feels like it's pressing down. He gave the barest smile. That's just July. They finished the meal without further conversation. When Marta began clearing the dishes, Clara rose to help. But the older woman waved her off. You've had a long ride. Sun's nearly down. Clara hesitated. Will Mr. Fremont be returning tomorrow? No word yet, Marta said. But that's the last I heard. Outside. The porch was cooler, not cool, but better. A slight wind tugged at the hem of her dress. From here, the horizon stretched out like a painting that never ended. Colors bled across the sky. Orange, gold, blood red. She sat on the top step, arms around her knees. She didn't hear Levy come out until he leaned against the post beside her. The nights are something special out here, he said. Clara jumped slightly, then smiled. I've never seen so many stars. Levy nodded, gaze still fixed on the sky. That's one thing I never tire of. She was quiet a moment then. Is that why you stay? For the stars. He glanced down at her, expression unreadable. Partly, he said. There's a freedom here you don't find in the East. Room to breathe. Clara looked out at the darkening land. It feels like the opposite to me. Like I could disappear and no one would know. Levy didn't argue. They sat in silence. A coyote called in the distance, long and low. Somewhere nearby, a gate creaked. Then slammed shut. Clara turned to him. Mr. Hart. Levy, can I ask you something? He didn't look at her, but his posture shifted, just enough. Go ahead. You think I've made a mistake coming here to marry a man I've never met? That caught him. He straightened, finally facing her. It's not my place to say. I'm asking anyway. He didn't answer right away. Then, softly, marriage is serious. More serious out here, where a woman doesn't have many ways back if things go wrong. She stared at the ground. You're not reassuring me. I'm not trying to scare you. Just saying maybe you ought to know the man before the ceremony. Clara's laugh was small, bitter. My trunk is unpacked. My ticket was one way. My mother expects letters with words like blessed and fortunate. I'm not sure I have the luxury of time. Levy turned his gaze back to the dark hills. There's always a choice, he said. Clara studied him. His profile looked carved in the dim light. Strong, steady, she asked. What aren't you telling me about Silas Fremont? He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped down off the porch. It's late, he said over his shoulder. You should get some sleep. She watched him disappear into the dark. That night, Levy asked if she'd ever considered turning back. The saddle didn't fit quite right. Clara shifted her weight, trying not to wince as the horse moved beneath her. Whisper. Levy had called the mare. A dapple gray with soft eyes and a calm gait. She was steady, at least, more than Clara felt. You're sitting too stiff, Levy said from ahead. I'm trying not to fall off. Clara shot back. Levy glanced over his shoulder. He was riding a deep bay gelding, moving like he was born in the saddle. That's the problem, he said. If you ride like you're waiting to fall, you will. She narrowed her eyes. I wasn't exactly raised with riding lessons. You've got good balance, he said. Let the horse carry you. Don't fight it. Clara took a breath and loosened her grip on the reins. The morning was cooler than the night had promised. The sky was a high blue. Cloudless, they were riding north, across open land beyond the ranch buildings. Wire fences bordered pastures, but beyond those, everything stretched wild and unclaimed. Levi had met her outside just after breakfast. He'd already saddled both horses, already packed a small satchel with water, and a wrapped parcel Marta had shoved into his hands without speaking. Clara had followed him without asking questions. Just glad to be away from the stillness of the house and the heavy knowledge that hung in its rafters. They rode without talking for a while. Clara focused on finding the rhythm of Whisper's movement, on keeping her hands relaxed. Eventually, the tension in her shoulders began to ease. Levi slowed as they reached a slight rise. "We'll stop up ahead. There's a spot with some shade." She nodded. When they reached it, a low shelf of rock under an outcropping, Levi dismounted first, tying his horse to a scrub pine. Clara tried to follow, awkwardly swinging her leg over the saddle. She didn't quite make it. Her boot caught in the stirrup, and she half fell, half slid off the horse. Levi was there before she hit the ground, catching her elbow and steadying her. "You all right?" he asked. She let out a short laugh. "Only my pride." Levi smiled, and it was the first time she saw it reach his eyes. They sat beneath the rock overhang, sipping water from a canteen and unwrapping the parcel. Thick bread, jerky, and wedges of cheese that had softened in the heat. Clara looked out at the land below. From here, she could see most of the northern pastures. Cattle moved slowly in the distance, small dark shapes against the pale grass. The mountains loomed further out, blue, gray and solid. "This place looks empty," she said, "but it isn't, is it?" Levi shook his head. "It breathes different than a town. Quieter. But it's alive." She nodded. "I think I understand." They sat in silence again, sharing a stillness that felt earned rather than awkward. Finally, Clara turned to him. "Can I ask something personal?" "You can ask. Have you ever been married?" Levi's gaze stayed on the horizon. "No." "Why not?" He hesitated, didn't find the time. "Or the right person." She studied his face. There was something distant in it, like a shutter had closed. "And before this?" She asked. "Before the ranch, I was a hand. Drove cattle. Rode fence. Did whatever work I could find." "That bruise," she said suddenly, "on your jaw, was that from work?" He looked at her then, startled. "You notice everything?" "No," she said. "Just the things people don't talk about." He didn't answer. They finished eating, and Livy stood to stretch. "We should keep moving. I want to show you the ridge." They mounted again and rode toward a long slope that climbed slowly to the west. Whisper picked up speed, sensing Clara's growing confidence. The wind caught strands of Clara's hair, tugging them free from her braid. Her cheeks flushed with motion and sunlight. At the top of the ridge, Levi pulled his horse to a halt. Clara joined him and caught her breath. The view was endless. Valleys rolled out in layers, broken only by thin threads of riverbed, and dark green cottonwoods clinging to the low points. Further off, a ribbon of smoke rose from a distant homestead. It all looked impossibly far away. "This is where I come when I don't want to be found," Levi said quietly. Clara looked over at him. "Why bring me here?" He was quiet a moment. "So you'd know it's real." "What is?" "This place. This life. What's out here if you stay?" She didn't answer. The wind pulled at her sleeves. Below them, a hawk circled high, tilting against the sun. "I meant what I said last night," Levi said. "You've got choices." Clara let out a slow breath. "Not many. More than you think." She turned to face him fully. "You don't even know me." He met her gaze without flinching. "No," he said. "But I see enough to know you're not here because you want to be owned." Her throat tightened. "And what if it's too late?" "It's not," he said. "Not yet." A silence passed between them. Then Levi's posture changed. He shifted in the saddle, eyes narrowing. "What is it?" Clara asked. He pointed back toward the ranch. "A dust cloud, fast moving, rising above the road. Rider," he said, voice tight, calming hard. She followed his gaze. The cloud was too fast for a wagon. One rider, maybe two. Hard to tell. Levi clicked to his horse. "We need to get down." Clara followed. Heart pounding, they rode fast, skirting the ridgeline. Then angling back toward a narrow stand of juniper, Levi pulled up once they were in the cover. Stay here? He said. I'll take a look. Clara wanted to argue, but he was already gone, circling back toward a rise that would give him a better vantage point. She waited, every sense alert. Whispers shifted beneath her, ears flicking. The wind carried the scent of dust and something sharper. Leather, sweat, urgency. Minutes passed. Then Levy came riding back fast, jaw tight. It's Silas Fremont, he said, and he brought the preacher. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. When? She asked. Now. Levy said. They're nearly to the house. She stared at him. But he wasn't supposed to be back until next week. Levy didn't reply. Clara turned her horse toward the direction of the ranch. But Levy caught her rein. You don't have to go back yet, he said. I do, she said, voice hard. It'll be worse if I don't. Levy studied her, then let go. They rode back in silence, the wind now colder against Clara's skin. By the time they reached the outer fence, they could see the black buggy standing in front of the main house, the horses still pawing at the ground. A tall man had already stepped out. He looked exactly like his photograph. By the time they saw the dust cloud on the horizon, Clara already knew who it was. Clara hadn't imagined him tall. Silas Fremont stepped down from the buggy with a slow, practiced grace, as if aware of the weight of eyes. His coat was dusted from the road, the cuffs clean, boots polished to a shine that didn't belong in this country. His preacher followed behind, red-faced and sweating, hat crushed in his hands. Clara stayed back near the corral, her fingers curled tight around Whisper's reins. Levy stood beside her, not speaking, eyes fixed on Fremont like he was trying to read something invisible in the man's posture. Silas didn't look at either of them. He went straight into the house. Levy glanced at her. You want me to come in with you? She shook her head. No. The inside of the house was cooler, but it felt smaller now, like something had been cinched tighter. Marta was in the hallway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. He's in the front parlor, she said without looking up. Waiting. Clara walked slowly, her boots loud on the wooden floor. When she reached the doorway, she paused. Fremont was standing by the window, one hand in his coat pocket, the other resting lightly on the sill. He turned when he heard her. Miss Whitmore, he said, voice smooth and warm as poured honey. Or should I say Clara now? She forced a smile. Silas. He took 2 steps toward her, then stopped just short of too close. His eyes were pale blue, and colder than she'd expected. You're earlier than planned, he said. I came when your letter told me to. He studied her. Is that so? She held his gaze. You weren't here. I was called to Bisbee, land matter. Urgent. A pause. Then he added, I expected you'd stay in town until I returned. Clara said nothing. Fremont walked past her slow, measured steps like a man inspecting his own house. Still, he said, this gives us time to prepare. The preacher's with me. Tomorrow afternoon should do. She turned to look at him sharply. Tomorrow. He smiled gently. No sense waiting. You've come all this way. I'd like time, she said, to get settled. To know you. There'll be time for all that, he said. After. Clara's jaw clenched. She wanted to say more, but her throat wouldn't open. Instead, she said quietly, I'm not a piece of cargo, Mr. Fremont. His expression shifted, just slightly, not quite anger, not quite offense, but a tightening around the eyes. I never said you were, he said, but let's not forget. You wrote back, you agreed. Clara's heart thudded. I agreed to meet. Not to marry without breath to think. Silas stepped forward again, closer this time. Clara, he said softly, you don't know what it's like out here. A woman alone doesn't have options, and a man in my position doesn't make offers twice. Something in his tone made her stomach twist. Then he smiled again. The warmth returned, too quick. Let's not sour things before they start, he said. You're tired. I'll have Marta move your trunk to the master bedroom. She froze. That's not. It's proper, he said. You'll be my wife tomorrow. She stared at him. Then, without a word, she turned and left the room. In the hallway, Marta stood still, as if she'd been waiting. Don't say anything, Clara whispered, her voice shaking. Marta didn't. Instead, she reached out and touched Clara's arm. Come with me. Clara followed her down the hall, past the guest room, past the main stairs, to a door Clara hadn't noticed before. It opened into a smaller wing of the house. Older, less polished, Marta led her into a narrow room with faded wallpaper and a small cot, no windows. A single oil lamp sat on the dresser. "You can sleep here tonight," Marta said quietly. Clara turned to her. "Will he know?" Marta gave a dry smile. "Eventually." Clara sat on the edge of the bed. "I need time." "You won't get much." Her voice broke. "I need to think." Marta touched her shoulder. "Do it fast." Outside, the sun dipped low. Shadows stretched across the yard like fingers reaching for the door. Levy didn't come to the house that night. She saw him once through the narrow slit of the kitchen window, silhouetted against the bunkhouse, speaking with Jesse Flynn. Then he was gone, swallowed into the dark. The next morning was quiet, too quiet. Clara rose before dawn. She washed with cold water from a basin, twisted her hair back tight, and buttoned her dress with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. In the kitchen, Marta handed her coffee without a word. The preacher's voice echoed faintly from the front parlor, reading from a book, pacing slowly, rehearsing his lines. "I can't do it," Clara said, barely above a whisper. Marta didn't look at her. "Then don't. He won't let me leave." "Then you need someone who will." Clara looked up sharply. "Levy." Marta met her gaze. "Is not afraid of Fremont. But he won't act unless you ask." Clara felt heat rise to her face. "And what would I ask him?" "To help," Marta said. "To help you run." Clara stood there, clutching the cup, heart beating so loud she could hardly hear the rest of the world. She stepped outside. The air was sharp with morning dust. Somewhere behind the barn she heard hammering, someone setting up chairs or a canopy or God knew what. Levy was by the fence, feeding one of the horses. He didn't look up when she approached. "I need to speak with you," she said. He turned. His face was unreadable. "Walk with me," she said. They moved toward the edge of the property, where the fence line met the arroyo. Clara stopped just short of the gate. "He's moving my things to his room," she said. "He says we marry today." Levy's jaw tensed. "I asked for time." He said no. "What do you want me to do?" Levy asked low. "Help me leave." A silence fell between them, broken only by the wind in the dry brush. Levi nodded once. "When?" "Tonight. After the preacher's gone," he said. "I'll get the horses ready." Clara touched his arm. "Thank you." Levy looked at her, eyes dark. "Don't thank me yet." They parted without another word. Back at the house, Fremont was in the sitting room, dressed in black. Boots shined. He turned when she entered. "There you are," he said. "I was about to send someone." "I was walking," she said. He frowned. "Not alone, I hope." "No." She lied. Jesse was nearby. The preacher stood. "Shall we begin the vows in an hour then?" Clara nodded, throat dry. Fremont smiled and took her hand. "See," he said. "Everything's falling into place." "The wedding's back on," he said, smiling. "Noon tomorrow." The lace dress hung over the foot of the bed like a warning. Clara stood in the doorway of the master bedroom, staring at the garment Fremont had laid out for her. The bodice was high, necked and stiff, sleeves buttoned to the wrist. The color was more bone than white, already yellowing around the collar. She didn't know who it had belonged to. Behind her, the door clicked shut. She turned. Silas was there, hat in hand, shirt collar undone. He leaned against the frame like he had every right to be in the room. Maybe legally, he did. That thought chilled her more than the morning air. "Thought you might want to see it," he said. Clara didn't answer. He stepped further in. "You'll look good in it. Suits your figure." She crossed her arms. "Where did it come from?" "My mother's," he said. "She kept it in a trunk. Said it ought to be passed down." Clara frowned. "You never mentioned her." He gave a brief shrug. "Not much to say. She died in childbirth. My father remarried a Soaks-woman, raised me hard and decent. But Mama always wanted me to marry someone proper." She stared at him. "And am I proper?" His eyes lingered on her a beat too long. "You're what I need." She felt the hairs on her neck rise. "You sent for me because of my letters," she said carefully. "Because I could read, keep books, write. You said you wanted a partner. And I do," he said. "But out here, a woman's got to be more than just letters. She's got to stand beside a man. Not question him at every turn." Clara stepped back. "I've never tried to control you." "No," he said. "But I see the way you speak with Levy. the way you look at him." Her stomach flipped. "I barely know him." Silas smiled. "But it didn't reach his eyes. You've known me less time. And yet here you are, in my house." "I came because you asked," she said. "Because you wrote like a man with substance." He took a step toward her. "I am a man with substance." "You're a man with secrets." His jaw tensed. "Is that what he told you?" "That I'm not who I say I am. No one had to tell me. I can feel it every time you speak." He moved fast. His hand didn't strike her, but it landed on the doorframe just beside her head. Not touching, but close enough that the air changed between them. "You've got a sharp tongue, Clara. You should mind where you use it." She didn't flinch. "And you should mind what kind of woman you think you've brought here." They stared at each other. Then, slowly, he stepped back. "I'll see you at the altar," he said. He left without another word. Clara waited until his footsteps faded before collapsing onto the bed, breath shaking. The dress still waited. She didn't touch it. The day dragged by late morning. Marta knocked once on the guest room door. "You need help dressing." Clara opened it. "No." Marta looked at her carefully. "He's pacing." Clara nodded. "Good." Marta handed her a small ribbon, faded blue. "Tie this to your wrist. Just in case." "In case of what?" "You'll know." By noon, the chairs were out behind the house, a white cloth draped between two fence posts. The preacher stood with his Bible open, sweating in the sun. Clara did not go outside. Instead, she waited, counted minutes in silence. Behind the far wall, she heard Silas's voice rising. Sharp, impatient. The moment stretched. And then came the knock, soft, precise. At the back door, Clara opened it. Levi stood there, dust on his boots, hat pulled low. His eyes flicked over her quickly, checking for bruises, maybe, or fear. He didn't speak. She stepped outside and followed. They moved quickly, skirting the edge of the barn where Jesse waited with 2 horses saddled and ready. He tossed Clara a satchel. "Light, half empty. Only what we could carry," he said. "Thank you," she whispered. "No time," Levi said. "We ride east. Cut through the mesquite. Fremont won't follow till he's sure you're gone." Clara hesitated at the stirrup behind them. The preacher's voice called out, "Silas, where is she?" Then silence, then a door slammed. "Hurry." Levi snapped. She swung up into the saddle, legs trembling, hands barely steady. Levi mounted beside her, Jesse already kicking into motion ahead. They rode out fast, dirt rising in a thick cloud behind them. They didn't look back. For the first mile nothing followed. Then, just as the fence line dipped into low brush, Levi pulled them off the trail, ducking under branches, hooves muffled by dry leaves. They waited. Minutes passed. Then came the sound of horses. Fremont's men, 3 of them, raced past the clearing, not seeing where the tracks had veered. Clara let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "They'll double back when they figure it," Jesse whispered. Levi nodded. "We split here." Clara looked at him alarmed. "What?" "I lead them off," Levi said. "You ride north with Jesse. Stay low." "No," Clara said. "That's not." "There's no time to argue," he said sharply. "If we stay together, they'll catch all of us." She stared at him. "You trusted me," he said. "Trust me now." She nodded. He turned his horse and rode west, hard and fast, dragging the main tracks with him. Clara and Jesse veered north. The land grew rougher. Gulches, dry riverbeds, patches of scrub thick enough to snag a skirt. Jesse led them through a rocky wash that curved behind a set of low hills. By late afternoon, Clara's mouth was dry, her legs aching. "We'll camp in the ravine," Jesse said. "He'll meet us there if he makes it." Jesse didn't answer. They reached the ravine by dusk, a low, sheltered cut in the land, hidden from the open sky. Clara slid off the horse and sank to her knees, dizzy from the day's heat and movement. Jesse built a small fire, low and smokeless. He didn't talk much. Neither did she. They waited and waited. Night fell. The sky turned deep and velvet, black stars bright enough to make her eyes sting somewhere far off. Coyotes howled. The wind changed. Still no Levi. Clara sat with her arms around her knees, staring at the dark edge of the ravine, willing him to appear. "He'll come," Jesse said quietly. But his voice didn't sound sure. She didn't sleep. She sat upright, bones stiff, fire dimming to coals. And she thought of the house, the dress, the way Fremont had looked at her. Not with affection, but with ownership. like a man appraising livestock. She thought of the ribbon around her wrist. And of Levy. Somewhere in the night, alone, he's moved your things to the master bedroom. Marta whispered. Midnight did not arrive cleanly. It crept in piece by piece, carried on the slow hush of the ranch settling, on the lanterns winking out one by one, on the sound of boots finally leaving the yard. Clara sat on the edge of the narrow cot Marta had given her, fully dressed, hands folded tight in her lap. The blue ribbon was knotted around her wrist, its faded fabric already warm against her skin. She listened. Footsteps passed the door, a man coughed, somewhere a chair scraped against wood. Then silence again. Clara rose, moving carefully, lifting the latch without letting it click. The hallway beyond was dark, the air stale and cool. She paused, counting her breath, then stepped out and eased the door shut behind her. Every board felt too loud. She kept to the wall, shoes in her hands now, stockinged feet finding the places that didn't creak. At the back stairs, she stopped again, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might carry down the steps ahead of her. Nothing. She descended. The kitchen smelled faintly of bread and lard. Moonlight spilled through the small window over the sink, silvering the edge of the table. Marta waited there, already cloaked in a shawl, her hair pulled tight. You're late, Marta whispered. I waited. Clara whispered back. Marta nodded once. Good. He's asleep. Or drunk. Or pretending to be one so he can catch someone in a lie. She pressed a bundle into Clara's hands. Food, water, matches. Don't waste them. Thank you, Clara said. Marta's fingers tightened around her wrist for a moment, pressing against the ribbon. You go straight north. Don't stop. Don't look back. Clara swallowed. There is no if, Marta said. Only how far you get before dawn. They moved to the back door. Marta eased it open, inch by inch. The hinges did not creak outside. The yard lay pale under the moon, the oak tree a dark shape at the edge of the house grounds, its branches heavy and low. A shadow detached itself from the base of the tree. Levi stepped forward. He was dressed dark, hat low, his horse already waiting behind him, reins looped loose. Another horse stood beside it. Smaller, sturdier, Jesse Flynn appeared from the shadows near the barn, leading it forward. You ready? Levi asked. Clara nodded. Though her throat felt locked, Marta stepped back, already retreating toward the house. Go, she said, now. They moved quickly, keeping low. Cutting across the yard toward the fence line, Clara's pulse roared in her ears. Every sound seemed magnified. The soft clink of tack, the snort of a horse, the whisper of fabric against skin. Livy swung into the saddle without a sound. Jesse boosted Clara up, hands firm at her waist. You ride close. Jesse murmured, do what he tells you. Clara gathered the reins. The horse beneath her shifted, impatient. They were almost clear of the yard, when a door banged open behind them. A voice cut through the night. Clara. Her name, spoken sharp and certain. She froze. Levi swore under his breath. Ride, he said, low and urgent. They spurred the horses forward. Hooves thundered against packed earth, then grass, then brush as they plunged into the dark beyond the fences. Branches snapped. Leaves tore at Clara's skirt. She leaned low over the horse's neck, gripping with her knees, trusting instinct more than skill. Behind them, shouts rose. After them. The night exploded with movement, horses, men, the crack of a whip. Clara's lungs burned as they rode hard, cutting east first, then veering north into thicker cover. Jesse led, choosing ground that would break their trail. Dry washes, rocky stretches where hooves left little mark. Levi rode last, glancing back again and again, listening. They slowed only once, ducking beneath a low stand of juniper. Levi raised a hand, signaling them to stop. The horses danced, sides heaving. They waited. Distant hooves thundered past, just yards away, the sound rising and falling like surf. Clara pressed a hand to her mouth to keep from breathing too loud. After a long minute, the sounds faded. Jesse exhaled. They missed the turn. Levi didn't relax. He swung down, crouching to study the ground by moonlight. They'll figure it, he said. Fremont's not stupid. Clara slid from the saddle, legs trembling. What now? Livy looked between her and Jesse, decision already set in his face. We split. Her stomach dropped. No. Yes, he said. I'll pull them west. Jesse takes you north. Ravine by first light. You said we'd stay together, she said. I said we'd get you out. Jesse shook his head. Levy, do it. Levy snapped. Then, softer, to Clara. If they catch all of us, it's over. She stepped toward him. You can't just. He caught her hands, fingers rough and warm. You trust me. She nodded, tears stinging her eyes. Then trust this. He leaned in, pressing his forehead briefly to hers, a grounding touch that felt like a promise, and a goodbye tangled together. Then he swung back into the saddle and kicked his horse hard, sending it crashing through the brush to the west, deliberately loud, deliberately reckless. Clara watched him disappear. Jesse didn't give her time to think. Come on, he said, already moving. We don't stop till dawn. They rode north through land that grew rougher by the mile. The moon dipped low. The stars wheeled overhead, cold and distant. Clara's hands ached from gripping the reins. Her thighs burned. Every sound behind them made her flinch. At a dry creek bed, Jesse pulled them down into the shadow of the bank, urging the horses to walk, not trot. Hale meet us, Jesse said, as if repeating it might make it true. He knows this country better than anyone. Clara nodded, though doubt gnawed at her. She kept seeing Levy's back as he rode away. The set of his shoulders, the way he hadn't looked back. They reached the ravine just before dawn. A narrow cut in the earth, steep sides offering shelter from the open land. Jesse led the horses down carefully, choosing a path that wouldn't crumble beneath them. Clara dismounted and nearly fell, legs numb. She sat on a rock, head in her hands. Breathing through the shaking, Jesse built a small fire, shielding it with stones. He handed her water. She drank greedily. They waited. The sky lightened. A thin gray line at the horizon. Birds stirred. Somewhere above, wind whispered through grass. Still no Lovey. Hours passed. The fire burned low. Jesse paced, stopping often to listen. Then he froze. Clara followed his gaze to the ravine edge. Dust. Not far off. Fresh. Moving fast. Jesse's face went pale. That's too many. Clara stood, heart racing. Is it him? Jesse shook his head slowly. Before she could ask more, a shout carried down into the ravine, sharp and unmistakable. Silas Fremont's voice. Jesse grabbed her arm. They circled. He pulled them wide, but they doubled back. Clara's mouth went dry. Livy. No sign. Jesse said, not yet. The sound of hooves grew louder, closer. Shadows moved along the rim above them. Jesse looked at her, jaw set. If they come down here. A gunshot cracked the air, echoing off the rock walls. Clara flinched, hands flying to her ears. Jesse drew his pistol, eyes scanning the edge. Then a second sound. Another set of hooves, fast and close. Cutting across the far side of the ravine, a familiar silhouette broke into view for a heartbeat, then vanished again, drawing shouts and gunfire with it. Levy. Hope surged. Fierce and painful, Jesse swore. He's trying to pull them off us now. The ground above erupted with movement. Men shouted orders. Horses snorted and skidded. Jesse grabbed Clara's reins. We move. Now. They mounted, urging the horses deeper into the ravine, away from the noise. The path narrowed, twisting between rock and brush. Behind them the sounds followed. Clara risked a glance back, heart in her throat. Jess's voice was tight when he spoke. They're already riding after us, Levi said. The ravine narrowed until the walls pressed close enough to scrape saddle and knee. Jesse led hard, leaning forward, urging the horse into a pace that felt just shy of reckless. Clara followed, every muscle locked tight, her breath ragged in her chest. The ground under them was uneven, loose stone giving way to packed dirt and back again above. The rim of the ravine flashed in broken pieces. Sky, brush, the shadow of movement. Gunfire cracked again. Too close. Keep your head down. Jesse shouted back. Clara did. Instinct more than obedience guiding her now. She leaned low, gripping the reins, letting the horse choose its footing. The animal snorted, ears pinned. Hooves striking sparks where stone met iron. They burst out of the ravine's far end into open scrub. Jesse didn't slow. He cut north, angling toward a stretch of land pocked with dry washes and thorny mesquite, the kind of ground that punished careless riders. Clara risked a glance behind. For a heartbeat, she saw Levy. He was high on the ridge to the west, riding hard and loud, deliberately exposed. 3 riders chased him, their silhouettes sharp against the pale rock. Levy turned his horse sharply, vanishing behind a fold in the land, drawing them with him like a flare in the dark. Then he was gone. Clara's throat closed. Jesse saw her look. "Don't," he said. "He wants you moving." The words hit like a blow. She faced forward again, forcing herself to breathe, to stay in the saddle, to trust the man who had already risked everything to buy her time. They rode through the night. The moon slid low, then dipped behind the hills, leaving only starlight. The air cooled, sharp against sweat-soaked skin. Clara's hands ached, fingers numb around the reins, her thighs burned. Once, she nearly slipped in the saddle, a moment of weakness that sent a spike of fear through her. Jesse slowed just enough to steady her. "Stay with me," he said. "We're not done yet." "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "North," he said, "far enough he won't expect it. There's a box canyon past the flats. We can lose them there if we're careful." "If," she echoed. He didn't answer. They crossed a dry riverbed, hooves clattering over stone, then climbed again into brush that tore at Clara's skirt and left scratches on her hands. Once, her horse stumbled, nearly going down. Jesse swore and reached back, catching the reins, steadying both animal and rider. "Easy," he murmured, more to the horse than to her. Hours passed that way. Movement, breath, pain. The constant listening for sounds that would mean they were too late. They didn't stop until the eastern sky began to lighten. A pale gray line crept up behind the hills, thinning the darkness. Jesse pulled them into a stand of low cottonwoods along a shallow wash. Dismounting stiffly, Clara slid down, legs shaking so badly she had to grab the saddle horn to stay upright. She leaned against her horse, chest heaving. Jesse checked the ground, crouching, studying tracks with a practiced eye. His jaw tightened. "They're still behind us," he said, "but not close. Not yet." Clara pressed a hand to her mouth. "Levy." Jesse shook his head. No sign. The words settled heavy between them. He handed her the canteen. She drank, the water warm but welcome. Her hands trembled so badly some of it spilled down her chin. "We can't stay," Jesse said. "Once the sun's fully up, we're easier to spot." Clara nodded. Though every part of her wanted to sit down, to close her eyes, to stop running, she mounted again, grimacing as her muscles protested. They rode on. The land flattened out, the scrub thinning. The sky grew brighter, the sun cresting the hills behind them, throwing long shadows ahead. Clara's eyes stung from wind and exhaustion. She kept scanning the horizon, expecting, dreading, movement. It came sooner than she hoped. A sound, faint at first. Hooves. Jesse slowed, lifting a hand. He slid from the saddle and dropped to one knee, ear to the ground. His face drained of color. "They're splitting," he said. "One rider wide, the rest straight on." Clara's heart hammered. "Can we outrun them?" He shook his head. "Not like this." She swallowed. "Then what?" Jesse met her gaze. For a moment, she saw the boy beneath the hat and dust, the fear, the calculation. Then it hardened into resolve. "They want you," he said. "Not me." Her stomach twisted. "What are you saying?" "I can draw some of them off," he said. "Buy you time." "No," she said immediately. "I won't let you." "It's what love I did." He cut in, and he didn't ask permission either. She stared at him, words failing. He swung into his saddle. "You keep north. There's a stand of rocks 2 miles on. Hide there. If I make it back around, I'll find you." "And if you don't?" she asked. He gave a tight smile. "Then keep going." Before she could say more, he spurred his horse east. Deliberately loud, hooves pounding, Clara watched him go, heart in her throat, then turned her horse north, forcing herself forward. She rode alone now. The silence felt heavier without Jesse's presence. Every sound seemed amplified. The creak of saddle leather, the horse's breathing, the rush of blood in her ears. She kept her pace steady, conserving what little strength she had left. The rocks came into view eventually, a jagged outcropping rising from the plain like broken teeth. Clara guided her horse toward it, dismounting stiffly once she reached the sheltering side. She led the horse deeper, out of sight, then sank down against the stone, sliding until she sat on the ground. Her hands shook uncontrollably. She pressed her forehead to her knees, drawing in shallow breaths. Images crowded her mind. Levi on the ridge, Jesse riding away, Silas Fremont's smile, the dress laid out on the bed like a promise she'd never meant to keep. She thought of her mother, of the letters she would never send, of the life she'd already lost by choosing to run. The horse snorted softly beside her. She reached out, fingers curling into its mane, grounding herself in the warmth and solidity of the animal. Time passed. She didn't know how much. Then she heard it. Hooves. Close. Clara froze. Heart slamming against her ribs, she held her breath listening. The sound grew louder, then slowed. A voice carried on the air, clear and unmistakable. Clara. Her name. She squeezed her eyes shut, a surge of anger and fear colliding in her chest. She stood, legs unsteady, and stepped out from behind the rocks. Silas Fremont sat astride his horse not 20 yards away, flanked by 2 men she didn't recognize. His hat was pushed back, his expression almost gentle. "There you are," he said. "I was beginning to think you'd gotten lost." She lifted her chin. "I'm not coming back." His smile tightened. "You're tired. Frightened. That happens when people make foolish decisions." "I made my own decision," she said. "I won't marry you." He studied her, gaze flicking briefly to the empty land behind her. "Where's Hart?" Her pulse jumped. She said nothing. Silas sighed. "That's a shame. I'd hoped to settle this without blood." One of the men shifted, hand brushing the butt of his pistol. Clara took a step back, fingers curling into fists at her sides. She could feel the future narrowing around her, options collapsing one by one. The sun climbed higher, burning away the last of the night's shadows. At sunrise, Clara heard horses behind her, and Silas shouting her name. Clara stood very still. The rocks at her back were warm already, the sun climbing fast, pressing heat into her shoulders. Silas Fremont sat his horse easily, one hand loose on the reins, the other resting on his thigh, as if this were a casual meeting on a road, and not the end of a chase. The 2 men with him flanked her at a distance, rifles slung low. Neither looked eager, neither looked surprised. "You don't need to do this," Clara said. Silas smiled. "I already have." Her mouth was dry. She forced herself to slow her breathing, to keep her hands loose at her sides. Panic would show. Panic would give him something to use. "You left without a word," he continued. "In the night. With my foreman." She lifted her chin. "I was confused. I didn't know what I was doing." The words tasted bitter, but she let them out anyway. Silas studied her, eyes narrowing slightly. "Is that so?" "Yes," she said quickly, panicked. "Everything happened too fast. The wedding, the preacher, being moved into your room. I didn't think. I was frightened." He tilted his head, watching her closely, weighing each word. "And Hart?" he asked. "Was he frightened too?" She hesitated just a fraction too long. Silas's gaze sharpened. "He put you up to this?" "No," she said. "He helped me because I asked him to. But I never meant for it to go this far." One of the men shifted his weight. The leather of his saddle creaked loudly in the silence. Silas leaned forward slightly in his saddle. "You expect me to believe you ran halfway across my land by accident?" She swallowed. "I expected you to come after me." That seemed to please him. "Good," he said softly. "That tells me you know where you belong." Her stomach twisted, but she kept her face composed. "I'm willing to come back," she said, "if you call off your men." Silas laughed quietly. "You don't get to set terms. I get to choose," she said, pushing back harder than she'd planned. "I chose you. I answered your letters. I came all this way. That has to count for something." He looked at her for a long moment. The sun glinted off the buckle at his waist. "Maybe it does," he said at last, "but you made a spectacle of yourself." "Of me?" She lowered her gaze, the picture of contrition. "I was wrong." Silas dismounted. The sound of his boots on the dirt made her heart jump. He approached her slowly, deliberately, stopping just out of arm's reach. He said, "Hungry. Frightened. People make mistakes in that state." "I understand that." She nodded, biting down on the inside of her cheek. "But Hart," he went on, "that's another matter." Her breath caught. "What do you mean?" she asked carefully. Silas turned his head, calling out without raising his voice, "Johnson, Peters." The men straightened. "Take her back to the ranch," Silas said, slow. "No rough handling." "And Hart?" Johnson asked. Silas's eyes never left Clara's face. "You see him, you don't hesitate." Clara's control slipped. "No," she said, stepping forward. "He didn't force me. This was my doing." Silas's hand shot out, gripping her wrist hard enough to make her gasp. He leaned in close, his voice low and even. "You don't protect men like that unless you care for them," he said. "And I don't share what's mine." He released her abruptly, as if she'd burned him. "Take her," he said again. Johnson took her arm, firm but not cruel. She didn't fight. Fighting now would only make things worse. As they turned back toward the horses, she looked once over Silas's shoulder, searching the ridgeline, the distant brush, any sign of levee. There was nothing. The ride back felt longer than the flight. The sun climbed higher, beating down on her head and shoulders. Dust coated her tongue. Johnson rode beside her in silence, his jaw set, eyes forward. The other man followed behind. "Mr. Johnson," Clara said quietly. He glanced at her, wary. "Miss, you don't have to do this." He sighed. "I work for Fremont. That's how things are. You saw how he spoke to me," she said. "You know what kind of man he is." Johnson's grip tightened slightly on the reins. "I know he pays on time." They rode on. When the ranch buildings came into view, Clara felt a strange mix of dread and relief. Familiarity, even of a place she feared, had its pull. Marta stood on the porch when they arrived, hands clasped tight in front of her apron. Her eyes flicked from Clara's face to Johnson's, then back again. "You're safe," Marta said. "For now," Clara replied. Silas arrived not long after, riding hard, dust-streaked, his expression unreadable. He dismounted and handed his reins to a waiting hand. "Get the horses watered," he said. "Then find Hart." Marta stiffened. "Mr. Fremont." He cut her off with a look. Inside, the house felt different, tighter, quieter. Clara was led not to the guest room or the small back room, but to the master bedroom. Her trunk stood open. Her clothes were half unpacked, folded into the dresser drawers with careless hands. The blue ribbon she'd worn on her wrist lay on the table, untied. Silas closed the door behind them. "You'll rest," he said. "Eat. We'll talk later. I want to speak now." She said. He turned to her, one eyebrow lifting. "About what?" "About calling this off." His mouth curved into a smile that made her skin prickle. "I already did," he said. "Postponed it." Her heart leapt. "You did. For today." He added, "People talk. It wouldn't do to have rumors." She let out a shaky breath. "Thank you." He watched her closely, then nodded toward the bed. "Lay down. You look half dead." She didn't move. Silas stepped closer. "Don't test me again, Clara." She met his gaze. "I won't." He left, locking the door behind him. The click echoed in the room. Clara sat on the edge of the bed, hands gripping the coverlet. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She forced herself to breathe, to think. If she was careful, if she waited, if she played this right, there was still time. Hours passed. Marta brought food on a tray, eyes darting nervously. "They're looking for him," she whispered. "Everywhere." Clara nodded. "They won't find him." Marta hesitated. "You shouldn't be here." "I know." That evening Silas returned. He had washed, changed clothes. He looked every inch the respectable ranch owner again. "The wedding's back on," he said, smiling. "Noon tomorrow." Clara felt the walls close in. The lock on the outside of the door was new. Clara noticed it the moment she woke. The dull iron catch fitted into the frame, where there hadn't been one before. Sunlight crept through the curtains, thin and pale, but the room felt smaller, tighter, like the walls had shifted inward during the night. She rose slowly, testing the handle. It didn't budge. A knock came an hour later. Marta's voice followed, low and careful. "Breakfast." When the door opened, Marta stepped in with a tray, eyes already scanning the room as if expecting something to be wrong. She set the tray down without meeting Clara's gaze. "You shouldn't have done that," Marta whispered. "Done what?" Clara asked. "Run," Marta said simply. "Men like him don't forget being made fools." Clara wrapped her hands around the cup, letting the warmth steady her. "Where is he?" "Town," Marta said. "For now." Clara looked up sharply. "Town. Business," Marta said again, the same word that had followed Clara across half a continent. "He'll be back before sundown." Before Clara could ask more, footsteps sounded in the hall. Marta straightened, her face going carefully blank. The door opened wider. The woman who stood there was not someone Clara expected to see. She was tall, dressed in black despite the heat, her hair pinned back in a style that spoke of mourning long past rather than fresh grief. Her eyes were sharp and clear, the kind that missed very little. "Good morning," the woman said. "I hope I'm not intruding." Marta stiffened. "Mrs. Taggart." The name landed hard, Eloise Taggart, the widow from Silver Flat. The woman who had written Clara a letter months ago, offering a room if she ever found herself in need. The letter Clara had folded and tucked away, thinking she would never need it. "You're not intruding," Clara said carefully. "Please." Eloise stepped inside, closing the door behind her with deliberate care. She glanced at the lock, one eyebrow lifting. "So," she said, "it's come to that." Marta hovered near the door. "I should stay," Eloise said gently. "You'll want to hear this too." Marta didn't argue. Eloise turned to Clara, studying her with open curiosity. "You look like someone who's run very fast and very far." Clara didn't answer. "I was married to a rancher once," Eloise continued, taking the chair opposite the bed without being invited. "Not Fremont. Another man, different name, same habits." Clara's fingers tightened around the cup. "He courted me with letters," Eloise said. "Spoke of partnership, of building something together. He liked that I could read. Liked that my father had been a lawyer back east. Made him feel respectable." Marta's breath caught. "And then?" Clara asked. Eloise smiled faintly. "Then I learned what respectability meant to him." The room was very quiet. "You're not the first woman Silas Fremont has sent for," Eloise said. Clara felt something cold settle in her stomach. "He told me there was another." "He told you what suited him," Eloise replied. "The last one lived in Silver Flat for a time. Quiet girl. Name was Ruth Calder." Marta frowned. "I don't remember. Most people don't." Eloise said, "That's the point." Clara swallowed. "What happened to her?" Eloise didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached into her reticule and withdrew a small object, setting it on the table between them, a brooch, simple, silver, shaped like a wildflower, one petal bent slightly out of place. "He gave this to her," Eloise said. "Said it was family. Just like the dress he's probably shown you." Clara's chested. "She left." "She vanished," Eloise said, "right before the wedding." Marta crossed herself under her breath. "There were rumors," Eloise went on. "People said she'd gotten cold feet. That she'd taken off with someone else. A ranch hand, maybe." Clara's pulse quickened, "But no one ever found her." Eloise finished. "No body. No letter." The silence pressed down. "Why are you telling me this?" Clara asked. Eloise leaned forward. "Because I buried a man who thought he owned me," she said quietly. "And because I won't stand by and watch another woman be folded into the ground while people tell themselves comforting stories." Clara stared at the brooch. The bent petal caught the light. "Silas Fremont doesn't forgive," Eloise said. "He doesn't forget. And he doesn't let go." Marta's voice shook. "Then why hasn't anyone stopped him?" Eloise's mouth curved without humor. "Because men like him are careful, and because people prefer explanations that don't cost them anything." Clara closed her eyes briefly. Images rose unbidden. Silas's hand gripping her wrist, the way he spoke of her as if she were already his, the calm certainty in his voice when he gave orders. "What do I do?" she asked. Eloise studied her. "That depends how badly you want to live." Clara opened her eyes. "Tell me." Eloise stood. "You have until nightfall," she said. "After that, even I can't help you." Marta inhaled sharply. "Why nightfall?" Clara asked. Eloise looked at the lock again. "Because by then he'll be back. And once he is, he won't leave you alone long enough to think." She moved toward the door, then paused. "If you see Levi Hart," she added, almost casually, "tell him I still remember what he did for my husband's first wife." Clara's head snapped up. "You know Levi?" Eloise smiled faintly. "Everyone knows something," she said. "The question is whether they use it." She left without another word. The door closed. The lock slid back into place. Marta sagged against the wall. "God help us." Clara stared at the brooch on the table. What did she mean? Marta whispered, "About Livy." Clara shook her head. "I don't know." But a strange thread tugged at her thoughts, connecting things she hadn't known how to fit together before. Levy's bruised jaw, his careful silences, the way Silas spoke of him with something close to contempt. The day crawled outside. She heard the ranch moving as it always had. Horses, men, the creak of wagons. Life continuing around the locked door, as if nothing were wrong. Marta brought lunch. Clara barely touched it. In the afternoon, the heat grew heavy, pressing against the windows. Clara paced the room, every step measured by the distance the lock allowed. She thought of running again, of breaking the window, of screaming until someone heard, but she knew better now. This wasn't about speed, it was about timing. Late in the afternoon, Marta returned, her face pale. "Hayes on the road back," she whispered. Marshal Crane was with him in town. Clara's heart stuttered. "The Marshal?" Marta nodded. "I don't know what that means." Neither did Clara, but the knot in her chest tightened. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, Clara moved to the window, watching the light fade. Shadows stretched long across the yard, reaching toward the house. She picked up the brooch, closing her fingers around it. The metal was cool, solid, real. Somewhere beyond the ranch, the road lay open. Beyond that, a town, a widow, a horseman who might or might not be alive. She didn't know how much time she had left, only that it was running out. "You have until nightfall," Alois had said. "After that, even I can't help you." The first thing Clara did was open the sewing box. It sat untouched on the dresser, still covered in the dust of dessous. She carried it to the bed, flipped the lid open, and rifled through the tangled threads and dull needles, until she found what she needed. Scissors, small, silver, sharp. Marta returned a few minutes later, tray in hand. "He's here," she whispered. Clara nodded, eyes on the scissors in her lap. "He brought the Marshal." Marta added, "They're sitting down to supper now." "How long?" Clara asked. Marta hesitated. "An hour, maybe 2. Clara stood. "That's all I need." Marta's eyes widened as she saw the scissors. "You're not going to?" "I'm not going to wait," Clara said. She crossed the room and pressed the scissors into Marta's hands. "Help me," she said. "We have to make it look right." Marta stared at her a moment, then shut the door gently. She bolted it from the inside, turned back, and nodded. "All right," she said. "But if we do this, you don't get to hesitate later." "I won't," Clara said. They worked fast. Marta stripped the bed, pulled the thin sheet from underneath, and together they cut it into long strips. Clara took off her dress and laid it flat across the bed. Marta cut near the waist, careful, precise, while Clara unwound the blue ribbon from her wrist and tied it around the makeshift bundle of cloth and thread. When they were done, Marta gathered the fabric pieces and carried them to the fireplace. She lit a small flame with the end of a taper and fed the cloth in slowly, watching it blacken and curl. Clara dressed again, pulling her shawl tight around her shoulders. "You can't leave through the front," Marta said. "Not with the Marshal here." "I won't," Clara said. She turned to the window and slid it open. The air outside was cooler now, dusk settling heavy on the land. She looked down. Only 1 story. But the drop would hurt if she didn't land clean. "I'll lower you," Marta said quietly. Grabbing one of the sheets they hadn't burned, they tied it off to the bed frame. Marta helped Clara climb onto the sill. "When you get past the north fence," Marta said, "there's a split in the road. Take the left fork. That'll lead you to Taggart's Da." Clara paused. "What if he follows?" "He will," Marta said, "but you'll be further than he thinks. If you're lucky, he'll waste time on the decoy. And if I'm not lucky—" Marta looked her straight in the eye. "Then don't stop running." Clara nodded once. Then she lowered herself out the window, gripping the sheet tight, sliding slowly until her feet hit the packed dirt with a soft thud. She crouched low, heart racing, then ducked into the shadows cast by the eaves of the house. The yard was quiet. The dining room sat on the far side. Candlelight flickered through the window. She saw silhouettes. 3 men seated unmoving, Fremont at the head. She moved low past the side of the house, keeping close to the shadows. The barn loomed ahead. If she could make it there, she could slip through the east side and circle around toward the creek bed. She was halfway across when a voice rang out. "Hey!" She froze. Bootsteps. Clara bolted. Behind her, the voice shouted again, louder now, angry and surprised. She ran flat out, lungs burning, legs already sore. She heard the scrape of a chair, the bark of Fremont's voice, and another yell. "Stop her!" She didn't stop. She ducked behind the tool shed, scrambled over the fence, and rolled into the dry creek bed. Rocks bit into her palms. She scrambled up the far side, heart hammering, skirt torn. Someone fired a shot. It cracked past her left shoulder and sent a bird screeching from the brush. She didn't look back. She ran until the ranch lights were gone, until the only sound was her breath and the soft thud of her feet on dirt. Her lungs ached, her body screamed for rest. But she kept going. The sky above her turned dark. Stars winked into place. Somewhere behind her, dogs began to bark. She crossed the north fence and found the split in the road, left fork. Just like Marta said, the path narrowed, weaving between old trees and tangled brush. The air grew colder. Her breath came out in clouds still. She didn't stop ahead. Something flickered. A lantern. She slowed, chest heaving. It was a porch light, dim, swaying gently in the breeze. A small house nestled between trees. Smoke curled from the chimney. And on the steps, shotgun across her lap, sat Eloise Taggart. "I was wondering how long you'd wait," Eloise said. Clara collapsed at the base of the steps. Too exhausted to speak, Eloise stood slowly and offered her a hand. "Come inside." Clara let herself be pulled up. Inside, the warmth hit her like a wave. Firelight. The scent of stew, old wood floors. It felt like a place that had never belonged to men like Fremont. "I don't have much time," Clara said, voice hoarse. Eloise nodded. "You won't need much." Clara looked at her. "How did you know I'd come here?" "Because I knew what you'd decide," Eloise said. "Same thing I did. Once. When everything else was stripped away." "And what's that?" Clara asked. Eloise's eyes were steady. "That dignity doesn't survive in cages." "Not for long." Clara sank into the chair near the fire. "I need a horse," she said, "and a direction." "You'll have both," Eloise said, "but you won't be alone." Clara looked up, sharply alive. She whispered. Eloise smiled. "You'll see him soon." Before Clara could ask more, a knock came at the back door. Two short. One long. Eloise didn't flinch. "You'd better answer that." Clara rose, legs trembling. She opened the door. Levy stood there, dirt-streaked, bleeding from a cut at his temple, eyes wide and dark with everything they hadn't said. He didn't speak. He just stepped forward and pulled her into his arms. From the dark behind him, another voice called, "They're coming. Fast." Clara drew back, met Levy's eyes, and nodded. "I'm not running anymore," she said, "not without ending it." Levy winced as Eloise dabbed alcohol on the cut above his eye. The cabin's fire threw long shadows across the room, and the quiet between them was taut, braced like a wire stretched too far. "You're lucky it wasn't deeper," she muttered. "Didn't feel lucky," he said. Clara sat across from them, eyes locked on Levy's face. He looked older now, not in years, but in something behind the eyes, something settled, like a man who'd stopped expecting fairness. "When did you get out?" she asked. "This morning," he said. Fremont had men searching every ridge from here to Santeco. "I slipped out under a rain squall." "Why didn't you come sooner?" The question came out harder than she meant. "I didn't know if you were alive," Levy replied, meeting her gaze. "I thought he might have." He stopped himself. By the time I reached Marta, she'd already sent word to Taggart. "I came straight here." Eloise stepped back, wiping her hands. "And he's not far behind." Clara stood. "Then we can't stay." Eloise didn't argue. "There's a narrow pass east of here, Deadwood Cut. If you make it through before sunrise, you've got a clean shot to Eldon Bluff." "And if we don't?" Levy asked. Eloise turned to the window. "Then you pray he's not faster than your horse." Clara stepped toward the door, but Eloise caught her wrist. "Wait." She handed Clara a folded piece of paper. Old, worn at the corners, Ruth Calder's handwriting. Eloise said softly, "I kept it because it wasn't fair how she disappeared." Clara unfolded it carefully. One line stood out, scrawled at the bottom in a shaking hand. "He said I was his." Like he was naming livestock. Clara looked up. "You think he'd—" "I know he did," Eloise said. "But I couldn't prove it then." "Maybe you still can." Levy took the letter from Clara's hands and tucked it into his coat. "Let's go." Outside, the wind had picked up. Night pressed close on all sides, and the lanterns swayed from their hooks. Clara mounted first, the saddle unfamiliar, but welcome under her legs. Levy swung up beside her. Eloise handed Levy a rifle. His old one, the stock worn smooth. "I figured you'd want this back." He nodded his thanks. Clara turned to Eloise. "You could come. I've made my peace," she said. "But you haven't." Eloise reached up and touched Clara's boot. "Ride smart." They galloped east. The hills were black silhouettes under a sky smeared with clouds. The moon hung low, smeared behind thin mist, casting faint silver light over the path. They rode hard, dirt kicking up in clumps behind them, hooves pounding like drums. After half an hour, they stopped to listen. Nothing then, just faintly. Hooves far off, closing. He's coming, Clara whispered. We keep moving, Levy said. They reached the edge of deadwood, cut just after midnight. The pass narrowed to a throat barely wide enough for 2 horses. The stone on either side climbed high, jagged, casting long shadows like open jaws. Lave dismounted. We'll go single file. If we're ambushed in here, there's no room to fight. You think he'd risk that? Clara asked. He's not the type to come alone. They walked their horses into the pass, every step slow and deliberate. Stone shifted above them, wind whistled through gaps, and more than once, Clara caught herself glancing up, expecting a shadow that wasn't there. Halfway through, something snapped behind them. Levy spun, rifle raised. A single man stepped into the narrow gap at their back. One of Fremont's riders, tall, lean, shotgun in hand. Levi fired first. The blast echoed like thunder between the walls. The man dropped instantly, weapon clattering to stone. Clara gasped. Go. Levi barked. Now. They ran the horses the rest of the way through, lungs burning. When they burst out on the far side, the valley beyond opened wide under the starlight. But their victory was short. Across the basin, silhouetted against the ridge, 4 riders stood waiting. At their head Silas Fremont. He didn't move, didn't shout. Just sat. Patient as a storm gathering on the horizon. Clara felt a chill slide down her back. Levy reloaded. We'll cut southeast. Stay low. They turned down into the scrub, weaving between thorn bushes and dry gullies. But they hadn't gone far before Clara pulled up short. There, she said, pointing to an old shack tucked near the base of the hill. Half collapsed, but with walls still standing. Levi shook his head, too exposed. But we can control the ground, Clara said. Better than being picked off in the open. He hesitated, then nodded. 10 minutes. Then we move again. They rode hard for the shack and dismounted. Levy kicked the half-rotted door open and dragged an old table across the front opening. Clara found a box of rusted nails and handed them off one by one as he braced it into place. We're not going to outrun him forever, she said. No, Levy replied. She looked at him. Then we make it count. He checked the rifle's chamber. We will. Outside, the wind died. So did the night sounds. It was too quiet. Then, just before dawn broke, a voice called out, Silas, I brought the preacher, he said calmly, somewhere beyond the brush, and a new dress. It's clean this time. Clara gritted her teeth. I figure you've had your fun. Silas continued. But it's time to come home. Levy raised the rifle to the window. Clara reached into his coat and pulled out the letter. She stepped out onto the porch, holding the paper high. This belonged to Ruth Calder. She shouted. It's her handwriting. She was afraid of you. Silas didn't answer right away. Then she ran off. Like you did. That was her choice. No, Clara said. You made her disappear. Just like you tried with me. Calm down, Clara, he said. Don't make this ugly. It's already ugly. She stepped back into the shack and handed Levi the letter. You still sure? He asked. Clara nodded. Then she said it. Quiet, final, but full of fire. But if we die here, I want it to mean something. Levi chambered around. Outside, Silas gave the order to move in. The first shot shattered the upper window frame. Levi pulled Clara down, pressing her against the floor as splinters rained around them. The table bracing the door groaned under pressure, hinges rattling with each footfall outside. The riders were closing in, slow and sure, the way men hunted cornered things. Southwall's weakest. Levy said, breath sharp, if they get behind us, we're done. Clara crawled toward the crate of broken tools in the corner, found a rusted hammer and handed it over. Levi yanked loose 2 planks and began reinforcing the back wall with anything solid. Wood nails, even the broken chair leg. Another shot hit the door. Louder, closer. Clara peered through a crack. She could make out one of the riders kneeling near the edge of the brush. Rifle braced, face half, shadowed. That's Clay Merton, she said. He used to work the stables. He's not working them anymore. Levi muttered. A rock sailed through the window, smashing a clay pot by Clara's elbow. She jumped, Heart hammering, Levi checked the rifle, 1 round left in the chamber, 5 loose in his pocket. How many bullets do they have? She asked. More than we do. Clara crawled back beside him. We don't have to kill them. Just hold out. Levi gave her a look. You think Fremont came here to wait us out? No, she said. He came to make sure no one finds us alive. Outside, another voice barked. Silas, calm, cruel. You're not soldiers. He called. You're scared. Bleeding. Tired. You're not built for this. Levi stood and fired 1 shot through the crack. A yelp followed. And then the sound of someone scrambling away. Clara reached for the broken lantern on the shelf, opened it with shaking hands, and found a few drops of kerosene sloshing inside. I've got an idea, she said, but we'll need a little more time. Levi glanced at her, nodded once, and took position at the door. The riders didn't charge, not yet. They were waiting for a better angle, a distraction. Waiting for their fear to be less than their orders. Clara gathered cloth scraps, wrapped them tight into a wick, dipped it in kerosene. She cracked a hole in the back wall just wide enough to fit her arm through. If they think we've lit the shack, she whispered, they'll assume we're desperate. Maybe draw one in close. Levi looked at her. And if they don't, then we buy 15 seconds anyway. She lit the rag, smoke curling upward. The light flared against the dry wood, and Clara shoved the makeshift torch through the hole and let it drop behind the shack. The wind caught it and blew smoke back across the field. Shouting erupted outside. One of the men yelled, "They're setting it on fire!" Another shouted orders. Feet thundered closer. Levi raised his rifle. A face appeared at the window. Young, scared, just a second too slow. Levi fired. The boy went down, screaming, not dead, but loud. Clara winced. That'll shake them. Levi said. It did. A pause, then more gunfire. Blind, erratic, scattered. 1 shot clipped the door. Another took a chunk out of the front post. And then silence, long enough for Clara to hear her own heartbeat. They're pulling back. She whispered. Levi didn't move. No, they're flanking. He turned just in time to see the shadow move along the west wall. Clara. Down. The blast hit the side panel. Wood exploded inward. Levi tackled her to the ground as splinters sliced past them. The rear wall shuddered. 2 riders pushed through the breach. One older, one barely more than a boy. Levi fired at the first, missed. But Clara was already moving. She grabbed the broken chair leg, swung hard at the boy's knee. He collapsed with a scream. Levi drove the butt of the rifle into the older man's throat. He dropped, choking. Clara scrambled for the rifle the boy had dropped, hands shaking. Another figure stepped into the breach. Silas. He didn't raise his gun. Just stood there, watching her. You really think this ends with you standing? He asked. Clara pointed the rifle at his chest. You killed Ruth Calder, she said. His jaw tightened. She ran. She was weak. You made her disappear. I made sure no one else saw her shame. Levi tried to rise, but Silas kicked him back down. Clara didn't lower the rifle. You're not God, she said. I'm the man who gave you everything. Silas snarled. And you ran. I chose. Silas took 1 step closer. Put the gun down, Clara. She shook her head. No. You won't shoot me. She squeezed the trigger. Click. Empty. Silas laughed. Clara didn't, because Levi, still on the floor, rolled and brought up his rifle. Silent. Steady. This one wasn't empty. He fired. Silas staggered. 1 step, 2, then fell. Silence. Clara stood frozen. Her arms shook. She dropped the rifle. Levi sat up slowly. Blood ran down the side of his face. But he was breathing. Has he? Clara nodded. Yeah. Outside, the last of the riders scattered. Some fired shots into the air, wild and panicked. Others rode off without looking back. The shack was in ruins, but it still stood. Levi leaned against the wall, looking up at her. Are you hurt? No. He smiled, crooked. First time today. Clara crossed to him, dropped beside him, and held his face in her hands. What now? He asked. She looked toward the horizon, where the first edge of sunlight broke the dark. We bury the dead, she said, and then we tell the truth. The first shovel hit dry earth just after sunrise. Levi dug in silence, his shirt clinging to his back. The blood on his sleeve dried to a stiff crust. Clara stood nearby, arms crossed tight, eyes fixed on the body laid out beside the shallow pit. Silas Fremont, face half covered with a blood-stained handkerchief, boots still on. They didn't say a prayer. There was nothing to bless. I should be the one doing it? Clara said quietly. Levy paused, leaned on the shovel. You already did the hard part. She didn't argue. The air smelled of smoke and sagebrush, sharp with heat rising too early. Buzzards circled high, already tracing slow spirals. Clara turned to look out across the plain. The riders were gone. The last of them had vanished into the morning hours ago, scattering like leaves on wind. None had dared stay. Levy said, "That's not true." Clara replied, "He'll be missed by the version of himself he sold to the town. The one in the clean suit, the one who smiled at church." She crouched and placed a small stone beside the grave, flat, smooth, unmarked, no headstone. Levy asked. Clara shook her head. "Let the dust have him." Levy nodded once and finished the last few scoops, then patted the dirt flat with the back of the shovel. They sat in the shade of the ruined shack, sharing what little water was left in Clara's canteen for a while. They didn't speak. Finally, Clara said, "We can't stay here." "No," Levy agreed. "Not with a dead man behind us and a town full of questions ahead." Clara reached into her satchel and pulled out the letter. The one Ruth Calder had written. It was folded now, soft at the creases but still legible. "I want to take this to Marshal Crane." Levy raised an eyebrow. "You trust him?" "I don't know," Clara admitted, "but I don't think we can disappear." "Not after this." Levy looked at her for a long time, then nodded. "You ride ahead?" he said. "Go alone." Clara blinked. "What? If we both show up, it'll look like a setup," he said. "They know I ran. They think I shot Fremont out of spite." "You did shoot Fremont?" "Yeah, but I waited until it mattered." She exhaled. "I'm not letting you take the fall." "I'm not," Levy said. "I'm giving you time. Go now. I'll circle wide and meet you at Taggart's by nightfall." Clara hesitated. "Clara," he said, voice low, "the story ends better if they hear it from you first." She stood slowly, packed the letter away. "If you're not there by nightfall, I come looking." "I wouldn't expect anything less." She mounted her horse and turned toward the open plain. Levy watched her ride until the dust swallowed her whole. It took her 3 hours to reach the edge of town. By then, the sun was high and her legs ached from the saddle. Her dress was dust-stained, her skin burned from wind and light. But she rode straight to the sheriff's office, dismounted, and tied off the reins. Marshal Crane looked up from his desk as she pushed open the door. "Miss Owens," he said, "wasn't expecting you." "I wasn't planning on coming," she replied, "but plans change." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Everything all right at Fremont's place?" She sat, laid the letter on the table. "He's dead." Crane didn't move. "What happened?" She told him. All of it, the arrival, the proposal, the pressure, the threats, the escape, the riders, the shack, the standoff. Ruth Calder, the letter. Crane listened without interrupting, though his jaw tightened with every new piece. When she was done, the silence was long and thick. "You have anyone to corroborate?" he asked finally. "Levy Hart. He's meeting me tonight at Taggart's stall." Crane nodded slowly. "And the body?" "Buried." "Any witnesses?" "No," she said. "Only ghosts." Crane picked up the letter and read it twice. Then he stood, walked to the window, and stared out across the street. "That's his handwriting," he said. "No," Clara replied. "It's Ruth's. I meant the kind of man who leaves ink like that behind." He turned back to her. "You understand what this means. People liked Fremont. He loaned money, bought cattle, gave speeches on Founders' Day, then let them remember him that way." She said, "I'm not here to burn his name. I'm here to stop the pattern." Crane tapped the letter against his palm. "You're not safe here, Miss Owens. Not until I finish sorting this." "I won't hide," she said. He nodded again, slower this time. "Then you'd better find somewhere that knows how to stand its ground." She rose. "I already have." By the time she left the office, the sun was dipping low. Eloise's porch light was already lit when Clara rode up. Levy wasn't there yet. She sat on the steps, watching the sky go pink and gold, the way it always did before night forgot to be gentle. Eloise brought her a cup of strong tea and didn't ask questions. "He'll come," Clara said softly. "I know," Eloise replied. When the hoofbeats came, They were slow, steady. Levi rode in with one arm pressed to his ribs, a tear in his sleeve, dust in his hair. But his eyes found Clara's and stayed there. "You make it?" she asked. "Had to take the long way," he said. Fremont's last dog tried to follow. And he didn't like how it ended. Clara helped him down. They sat on the porch while the cricket started to sing. She leaned her shoulder against his. "We did it." He nodded. "Mostly." They both looked toward the open dark. "Sometimes survival's not the hardest part," Clara said. "It's what comes after." And neither of them argued with that. A month passed. The shack where Silas Fremont fell was now nothing more than ash and bones. Levi had ridden back one last time alone, and scattered the grave to dust. No marker, no memory, just the wind, which didn't care who lived or died in that place. Clara stayed at Taggart's for a while longer. She helped Eloy's mend fences, clean rooms, and hang laundry on the line. Her hands grew calloused, her back strong. Each day, she slept deeper. The shadows that used to jolt her awake at dawn now faded quietly with the night. News traveled slow out west, but it traveled. People stopped whispering about the girl who'd come to marry Fremont and started nodding to the woman who had survived him, not with a gun or a headline, but by standing her ground and walking forward. Levi stayed near. He didn't crowd her, didn't speak of things not yet named, but he was there in small ways. A boot print by the door, a fresh pail of water, a hand at her elbow when the wagon wheel stuck in mud. They didn't rush toward anything. Not love, not forgiveness, just the quiet understanding that sometimes beginning again meant not having to explain who you used to be. One evening, as August rolled in and the heat broke with a soft rain, Clara stood beneath the awning and watched the droplets darken the dirt. Levi stepped up beside her, arms crossed. "You ever think about leaving?" he asked. She thought for a moment. "No, I think about building something here. Something that can't be taken." He nodded, slow. "You'd be good at that." Clara looked at him. "So would you." He hesitated, then said, "There's a cabin near Red Willow Creek. Land's clean. Soul's soft. Needs a roof." She smiled. "Needs a lot more than that. I've got time." They stood in the rain until the sky cleared and the horizon burned gold again. Weeks later, Marshall Crane rode through with news. Ruth Calder's name had been restored to the church record. Her grave, once hidden near the canyon ridge, now bore a proper stone, carved with the truth of her life and the injustice of her end. Crane said it wasn't much. Clara said it was a start. They rode out to see it together. Clara knelt by the stone. Levi stood a few paces back, hat in hand. She was never weak. Clara said, "She just ran out of places to go. She made it easier for you to find your way." Levi added. Clara brushed her fingers over the etched name, then stood. "We owe her." They rode back without speaking. The silence not heavy, just full, the kind of quiet that comes after the last word has been spoken. Fall came early that year. The cabin by Red Willow took shape with slow hands and honest labor. Marta came out to bless the threshold. Eloise brought seeds, and one afternoon, Levi found a blue ribbon tucked into the corner of Clara's drawer. Neatly folded, not forgotten. They never held a wedding. There were no vows spoken under a sky or before a preacher. But they lived like people who had already promised something, not to never leave, but to always return, to wake up and choose one another again and again. In the long days, the hard seasons, and in the quiet between, the land didn't care about their pasts, but it gave them space to shape what came next. In time, people forgot the details. They stopped remembering Fremont's name, stopped asking how Clara arrived, or where Levi had once disappeared to. What remained was this: a woman who came west with a trunk and a stranger's promise, and a man who said, "Let me earn your yes instead." And in the end, he did, because what they built wasn't loud, it wasn't legend, it was just good, strong, free.